Hello, and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is June 28th, 2018, and this is episode 578. I'm referring to it as Oops All Emails. And I'm your host, James Jones. Joining me today is Mr. John Lindeman.
It's great to be here, James.
Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, everyone.
And Mr. Guillaume Bayat.
It's just as well we're not doing new business anymore. Pac-Man is the only game I need.
We're doing this for you. We're trying to hide. So we're in the phase of addiction, and we're trying to hide your addiction from everybody else.
Yep.
We're trying to help you save face, hoping you'll just kind of grow out of it.
Yeah, just planning the intervention in the meantime.
Yeah. I mean, what we're going to do is
this is the love of your life we're talking about, though. We realize that. So
we're going to hire Billy Mitchell to actually learn to play Pac-Man, and then
I don't fear him.
Get a higher score than you with just the name Guillaume. Please stop. And then we're going to hope that that message resonates with you and that we can save you from yourself.
All right.
Or maybe we'll have to get 1 point higher, so when you beat it, then you'll get that feeling of accomplishment followed by the emptiness of, my friends did this for me. Maybe it's time to seek professional help. Probably not, though. It's probably not how it's going to work out because we're not good at following through on plans anyway. So, hello! This is a podcast, and this week, we're going to answer your questions. It's email. It's the email week. You can send emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. We normally answer questions. We get a lot of emails, and unfortunately, we'll miss some. We haven't had the opportunity to do emails much in the last few weeks. You know, we had the Retroactive, we had E3, we had the really long new business last week. Emails have been email time has been at a premium, and so we're going to try to reconcile that this week by giving you more email than usual. Usually 4 is an aggressive target for us. We're going for 6. We're using both segments. So I want to go ahead, though, and explain that just because we may have missed your email in the past doesn't mean it wasn't good. If we missed it, you can send it to us again. You know, it's been a few weeks. It's just sometimes we lose track of them. We get a ton of email that's not RFN related in the inbox. It's hard sometimes to keep track of this stuff. But to give you a baseline of what you might want to consider a good email, Nintendo had their annual investor Q&A coinciding with the changeover at CEO this week. And I'm going to read a translated, paraphrased question. Question number 7. This is a professional investor at Nintendo's headquarters asking a question, presumably on behalf of a company who has millions of dollars worth of a vested interest in Nintendo. I'd like to ask about your Universal Studios Japan. Will it have synergy with the products you're selling now? Won't the theme park obviate the need to buy software? So remember, you too can ask a better question than an investor who said, is people going to replace all of their video game consumption with a theme park attraction?
In economics, we call them perfect substitutes.
If you're curious what the answer was, Nintendo just didn't answer it. Instead, they chided him for not knowing there's a Hollywood and Orlando location. Fantastic. So remember, if your question's better than that, which is not a high bar, we're pointing out again, that is a very low bar to cross over. Go ahead and send it to us. It's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com, and we're going to get started right now. That is enough stalling. I have, at this point, 4 minutes of not answering questions in the book. So, John, would you care to read the first email?
certainly. Martin, Reg McFly from NWR Discord writes, Dear RFN boys, my hearing is disintegrating, and by the time I'm 40, 10 years from now, I may be deaf. It sucks. Anyway, I'm now wearing hearing aids and I can hear well. My questions are, number 1, what games should I enjoy now with awesome music? 2, what games do you think work best without music? Again, hoping the unicycle from Unit Rally makes it to Smash. Get it right.
This is a callback to an episode so long ago. I had to think about what he was referencing there.
Yeah, it was my fault. It was Freudian slip of port everything to Switch, whereas now we're in the license everything for Smash phase. We've moved on.
What if you port it to Switch and then license it for Smash?
Also acceptable, yeah.
I mean, Goku in Smash, please. Like that's where we're at. We need it, so let's get on there. So games that don't feature music might be tougher than games that have really good music, because I don't usually think about it. We'll start with the easier one.
Yeah, but first of all, Martin, like we're really sorry to learn that, and
Absolutely.
I don't know. Like I knew a guy in college who needed hearing aids and whose hearing was going. With hearing aids, he could hear music from games, he could listen to music, and it was very helpful. But most of the time, he seemed to just go without them, and could still enjoy the bass from music and from kind of the low frequencies. And apropos of nothing, he claimed to be able to hear the vibrators from the girls who lived upstairs in residence. I choose to believe that they had electric toothbrushes. I might just be in denial. I couldn't hear them. But I mean, like, it could have been anything that has a tiny motor in them. So anyway, I call bullshit.
Look, which one of you has trained his remaining senses to be stronger?
These are the superpowers you have to look forward to, apparently.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is what a real world X-Man is.
This is probably the best pep talk I've ever heard. Yeah.
But on that line
So
of thought,
hold on. I want to pause for a second, because that pep talk is, by the way, Martin, when you're 40, living in the dorms.
I'm just saying, there is an upside, maybe.
You'll be able to hear when the 19-year-old girl on floor 3 is using her personal stimulator.
Personal massager, James.
Enjoy your massage, John.
Yes.
I guess a more relevant point would be to perhaps, like, if right now you're playing games that have a very good, like, baseline or something, you might want to save them for the future, since you might still enjoy those, and invest in a good subwoofer or something. I don't know. No? Is that stupid?
No, I would have to.
So they did make back when JCPenney's used to do like the Wish book when I was a kid, where they would send out this big like 700-page catalog right around Christmas time to get kids to circle things their parents will buy them. They used to have this stupid fucking chair that had speakers built into the back of it.
Right.
So you could feel it as you were sitting on it.
Yeah.
Which is honestly the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, at the same time, it could be cool. I'm sure that, what's the name of the guy who created Luminous? I'm sure he's really into that.
Mizuguchi. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mizuguchi is always like one step from like, dude, are you making a toy that sexually gratifies you to the rhythm of your music? Sir, I need you to stop. So that's actually, it was the trance vibrator is what your roommate was hearing upstairs. Yeah,
a poor substitute for that could be, like putting Joy-Cons on your feet and then, having one in each hand and just feeling Luminous.
Is that the new Labo?
No, but that's the thing. I'm pretty sure it's something that you can do. Because, of course, Mizuguchi was not interested in, in working on a Nintendo platform until he heard about the HD Rumble, so...
I appreciate his hold to his art. And also, we're stalling because we're trying to think of a game that we can come up with. It's like, it's better without a lot of background music.
One final preface that needs to be said in this situation is that if this hasn't already convinced you, Martin, you should probably spend this precious decade of being able to hear not listening to us. I think is the main thing.
I would argue that goes to people who aren't at risk of losing their hearing as well.
I mean, none of us know how long we've got left in general, or our senses, or any. Live every day like your last, which we already do by trying to get one place higher on Pac-Man leaderboards.
Exactly, that's how I'm trying to achieve immortality. Yep.
Yeah, watching World Cup games that have no relevance to the outcome because it's already been decided. Like, we all do that. We all cherish our lives that much. But yeah, I think I dare say there may be better things to listen to when you know you've only got a decade of hearing left. But I mean, the game soundtracks, there's a hell of a lot that are really great. But I kind of, if I was in this situation, I think the priority first would be the ones where the music is kind of most central to the experience rather than just a great background music kind of situation. So I'm not sure, what Martin's familiarity is with various games here or anything like that, but certainly, something that I absolutely love is Rhythm Heaven. And it's just a completely, it's not like your average rhythm kind of game or music game. It's just very, very individual, a very special kind of intersection of audio and visual elements. That where really you only need the sound to kind of
in most cases, yeah.
But the way it kind of mingles with the visuals and screws with you and all that is just something I really love. And if Martin has not kind of sampled that series before, I think it's something that it's not going to click with everyone. I think we've kind of established that over the years of the series being released in the West and stuff. But I think that's worth trying.
I think if you're looking for something that's more kind of in the rhythm game space, because Rhythm Heaven Fever Rhythm Heaven in general is like a lot more nuanced. Like there are big songs in there too, but it's not always the thing it's going for. Like sometimes it's going for just like beat patterns and stuff. Like there are some big songs that come up, but you know what I mean? Like it's not like, oh, here's music the whole way through. Some of them are a lot more simple than that. It's like Flockstep is really just, it's a friggin' like woodblock for the most part. Like there's music in there. There's like a song layered on top of it, but it's just a lot of dook, 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 dook that you have to tap out to. I think something like VidRibbon is kind of neat because it's not that it provides the music, you provide the music. If you can get this fucking PS... Actually, I think they re-released VidRibbon.
They did on the PlayStation 3 on PSN, but I found that I couldn't really play it because of the lag. Or maybe I just never really found the right rhythm. I don't know, but it was not a good experience. But maybe I needed to give it more of a shot.
But basically the idea was that you put VidRibbon into your PlayStation, it loaded it into memory, and then you put your personal CDs in there, and it would create levels based on the music.
Right.
Which would then pair with the music. That's really cool. I like that a lot. It's not so much like this game's got amazing music. It's that this music just plays well with the game. And of course you have things like Owen Don, which are just using licensed music. That's just stupid and ridiculous.
I'd say, you'd have to have a couple of Super NES games on there. I'd say probably Final Fantasy 3/6 would be on there. It has really good music. Super Castlevania 4 also has really good music.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
ActRaiser, Chrono Trigger.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of my favourite soundtracks ever on Super Nintendo. And with not necessarily like critical in a kind of experience or gameplay way that we're talking about with Rhythm Heaven or some other games, or presumably Lumines, which I've never played any version of Lumines, so although I am interested, especially now it's on Switch. But they're just they really enrich the experience for me back when I played those games originally. I mean, how much of it you can sort of. What it would mean to someone now who doesn't have like the same weird affection for those Super Nintendo samples that I do, and many of us do, that played the games in the 90s. But it's certainly compositionally they are very strong.
I would say that moving forward, pretty much all the Monolith stuff, with one volcano punching exception.
I think we demonstrated last week the music's excellent. I will not have anything bad said.
Yeah, that fucking bombastic thing.
Well, what would you suggest? Though? Here's this movie that's trying to make The Rock look like some sort of art house. Here's a game that's trying to make The Rock look like an art house movie, and let's get Philip Glass to do the soundtrack. Like, no, it's
what's upsetting is that's exactly who I was going to pull on you.
Philip Glass did do the score for a war movie once, Hamburger Hill. There's a little bit of random movie trivia for you.
Oh my God, he did, didn't he? Jesus. So what I'm just saying, like, maybe a song that doesn't sound like what Jerry Bruckheimer like overdubs his farts with to hide them. Like, just take it down a little bit.
It's one way to refer to those movies.
But like, obviously Xenoblade when it came out blew us the fuck away because like how it layers
really
how it layers that soundtrack with the world presentation. You'll turn a corner onto a place and realize you're on the back of the Bionis, and the music is keyed to kick in right there. There's that long period through the swamp where the swamp just looks kind of boring during the day. It's kind of uninspiring, and then it flips on the night. The music changes, and the entire thing goes bioluminescent. Like I still like distinctly remember that visual and sound cue as the sun went down, and it's been 5 years at this point. There are games where the music is used as like an exclamation point on what's going on around it. Not just that the music's really good, but that the music is being used to sort of create additional emotional reactions at like specific moments. Even Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which I think has in some ways is a better score than its predecessor, doesn't quite do the same thing in terms of like using it for hammer blows to kind of emphasize other moments. But of course, that's going to be a huge. Your mileage may vary because you have to already be invested in the game for that to click.
Yeah, oh sure, yeah.
Apparently, the soundtrack for the Castlevania fighting game is really good, but the game is not. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I've heard bits of it, and yeah, I presume it certainly seems like maybe the best thing to come out of that game. Although I've not played it, so I can't say for sure. But it's a little thing is, if you've heard a lot of Castlevania remixes down the years, which I have, it's not really that different from a lot of the kind of rock-centric takes on that. So it's nothing like groundbreaking, but
it's official at least.
Yeah, true. I wouldn't prioritise it. Well, I certainly haven't. Let's put it that way. It's still one of the relatively few Castlevania branded products I haven't owned in my life.
Puzzle games also puzzle games work really well when you get into that like semi-trance state where your brain isn't necessarily thinking about what you're gonna do, it's just kind of happening.
A game for that is Thumper.
Thumper's a really good choice the same way, because then the music starts to kind of like feedback loop you into that trance, where you start to almost disconnect your consciousness from what's happening. It sounds really, really stupid. But what I'm saying is, like, your eye is intaking information and your hands are just doing it. And the part of your brain where you're saying, like, oh, I need to put that here, I need to put that there. Or if it's a rhythm game, oh, I need to press A, I need to press Y. Like, that part is becoming subconscious. Like, it's actually being pushed out of active thought into just sort of, like, automatic response. And music can kind of help create that loop additionally. And that's kind of when those games become most effective. Because in general, unless you're like Guillaume here, puzzle games and games of that ilk are really designed to just kind of kill time. And there's no better way to kill time than just shut off large portions of your brain and just let them run on autopilot.
I do it on this podcast weekly.
We know.
The real question is, do those switches ever flip back up, though, John?
This is true.
Are we just knocking off one more switch every week?
Yeah, it's like on an arcade board. You just have a number of little dip switches.
All the dip switches in the off state.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the opposite question though, of like games where they're not being music. I'm not choosing to read this as games where the music going away would have been preferable. Like, this isn't an excite truck situation where it's like the music's so bad we have to give you the ability to replace it.
They did, to be fair. They did do that. You could use the SD card to do custom soundtracks.
And then they patched it out because they didn't want to pay for the fucking MP3 license. And they replaced it with, what was it?
Excite Bots, right? Yeah, they didn't do that.
No, the Excite Bike, they patched it to be like, what's the Microsoft's weird format they created for
Oh
music.
yeah, that was the channel that did that, right? As well. They had a sort of there was like the photo channel. It was one of those channels.
Yes,
that,
the photo channel could play music for reasons. And then they got rid of MP3 and replaced it with whatever Microsoft. I can't remember what Microsoft's stupid file format for music was, but yeah, because they didn't want to pay the MP3 license. That was stupid. So, like, what's a game that makes really good use of silence? Like, some horror games do. Like, they don't have... Obviously, a lot of horror games use background music to create ominous intent. But there are some that just go pure silence. Or just like drones.
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on how you read this. I mean, in terms of, games that, certainly could... Not necessarily that you would need to, like, because the music's abrasive, but that work fine without the music being a big presence. Like there's a lot of portable games that I've enjoyed a lot down the years have fallen into that category.
Well, we've also gone on the record to say that most Picross games from Nintendo are better enjoyed with a sound off.
It's true.
Because the music is just I don't know what they were thinking. It's super great.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I think the music is better in Picross 3D,
the latest one,
second round or whatever, but than it was in the first one. But I barely played with the music on in either case, so I can't really say with any authority. But it's regardless, it functions very, very well without any kind of musical or other audio accompaniment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pinball games, too. Can work well without music.
And I really think that some of the games that make use more of the HD Rumble might be good. Because, like, it kind of supplements the music or the sound effects, but then you're still kind of enjoying a part of that experience.
That's true. There's been a couple of cases... I mean, most of my observations with HD Rumble... so far are that when people other than Nintendo use it on Switch, it tends to be too
strong,
too loud. Like if you are playing with the sound either off or low through the speakers, it's really loud. It's just kind of obnoxious. But there's a couple of good implementation. Maybe still a bit on the loud side, but at least it's kind of the effect is pretty good. And it definitely kind of goes to helping. It feels kind of authentic because of the way that it meshes with the sound effects. Like Mummy Demastered has HD Rumble. It sort of has quite different effects for the different kinds of guns. If you've got something that's like a rocket launcher type of thing where you've got a big fiery explosion with smoke clearing and all that, it really kind of helps bring that across. And also Bloodstained has some pretty good HD Rumble in it, like where you kind of have a window appropriately enough shattering, and you get that kind of sharp feeling of the glass shattering kind of thing. There's some nice kind of embellishments in that area you're starting to see now.
Yeah, and I talked about Subsurface Circular and the kind of the very subtle HD Rumble effect of making you feel like you're in, the underground in the train. And it's just, I didn't love the game, but I really liked what they did with the HD Rumble.
I would say games where the music can really kind of, it's not bad, but it's just not relevant are these open world games where you're traveling long distances.
I think you could play something like Ocarina of Time without sound. I think you could do that.
Sure, I was thinking something bigger though, like Skyrim. Like the Skyrim music just goes. And does it need to? Like you're going to hear the song for a while. You're just sort of traveling. Zelda does the same thing, but in Zelda Breath of the Wild, they actually take the music way down.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's right. When he was talking about using silence, or at least quiet, that was the first thing I thought of because it's a very conscious choice. Even though over the entire experience, there's loads of music in that.
Oh
game.
Yeah, I mean the music will just explode sometimes, but most of the time when you're just traveling, like if you're on the horse, maybe you hear little flutters of music.
The piano sort of tinkling is lovely, and then when you ride up towards Hyrule Castle, the actual Zelda overworld theme creeps in. It's a beautiful touch.
Or as you get close to a town, you hear the music kind of come in, but in general, the song or the game is very cognizant about not adding a bunch of noise. When you hear noise, it's usually something out to kill you.
Yeah, and also they don't tell their
I mean,
stories through a lot of, voice acting as well.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the thing, though. With games, particularly the horror example that you spoke of. Sometimes games or other media can use sparse sound design very effectively, but of course it kind of the whole point is about making this where it does come in more impactful. And that's the problem, of course, is if you just can't kind of hear those parts, then you are losing that impact. So
right.
It's certainly an interesting area where I think certain developers have kind of made good use of it, and it's kind of a more. It's only natural that it's crept in more and more over time, because at first there's a lot of sort of music over everything, even if it's not particularly kind of appropriate, or like really small loops of music sort of play, because there's just the technical restrictions and all that kind of thing. But
yeah, once they could do Red Book audio, there was this like we've got to put recorded music in here. But like you said, if you're on a CD, well, CDs, like audio CDs, take up the space with music. So you also have to put a game on that damn thing. So I mean, you have things like Final Fantasy VIII, where on PlayStation, I think, what was it, like 8 CDs? Or something obscene like that? Like, yeah, because you had to put the music on every CD. So, good luck with that. But now with storage space being whatever, there is this weird sense of like we've got to fill the space with noise. And the Zelda example and like those horror games, they really just like in Zelda you won't hear music at all unless something's about to shoot you. I mean, in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah, well, that's kind of the dynamic component has really kind of been in there since Ocarina. But they're much happier for it to be a case of the dynamic component being music kind of rising out of quiet, rather than like the overworld theme segueing into a battle theme, or like the dungeon theme segueing into battle themes.
In a game like that, though, losing the sound can be really tough, because like sometimes that's your only warning that a Guardian's keying off on you.
Yeah, and they're very, like I said, you go back to that on the N64. Part of it felt a little bit like trying to justify why they went with cartridges. But it was one of the better reasons, the dynamic music stuff.
Yeah.
And they're very keen on kind of building in these audio elements that go beyond, that actually have applicability to gameplay and stuff, which is a neat touch, but of course in the context of this question is rather unfortunate as well.
I'm going to bring up Grim Fandango, which is coming out soon, and the music, the soundtrack is not that great, but the voice acting, I still believe it's some of the best delivery I've ever heard in the comedy game, and I think, that's something to experience. They did a live reading when they announced the Switch version was coming out. They were doing a live reading with the actors on stage at E3, and it seemed to be a pretty good time. But like it within the game also, like the voice acting, the direction, the editing, they're all just top notch, and I haven't really seen anything like that since.
Cool. All right, well, we should probably move on to our next email.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and read it. Sean writes, "Hey, RFN crew. Well, I've been sending you stupid emails as a response to James challenging me on Twitter to outdo an email about the sex life of Mario." I did not do that. "I have a more serious discussion regarding game design and Nintendo that I'd like to hear your input on. I'm a board game designer. My second board game attached to a video game license coming exclusively to GameStops in August. I invented a term that I'm sure a real term exists for, called design blindness. Design blindness is a state where game designers get into when they become complacent in their own designs. This occurs when they see improvement in little tweaks and small development victories, working in an echo chamber with the in-house playtesters, which causes them to become disconnected that the final product is actually fun. My first game struggled with this, so for my second game, I decided to use Nintendo's philosophy of having a staff with interests and hobbies outside of video games. I used half my free time doing other things, such as snowboarding, gardening, etc. I also put it in front of many random gamers, usually strangers, to playtest the game. This helped my second game to have an amazing response among even hardcore board gamers in this niche boutique board game industry. Is this Nintendo's secret to making amazing games so consistently, even with development teams working for years on the same project? Do you think there's merit in having a staff that rotates out to work on other projects within development studio to keep a fresh take and an open mind?
Well, Nintendo is a little bit different in that it doesn't lay off everyone after every game. I don't know.
Not every studio does that.
No, but yeah, Japanese studios don't do it as much as Western studios seem to do it. And yeah, I'm aware they don't all do it and then don't lay off everyone, but usually a good contingent of the people who worked on the game get laid off at the end.
I mean, there's a lot of contractors that get hired to work on big projects like that, and so once they're done, the contract's done, and
sure,
you're out. And it's entirely possible that next game rolls up, hey, the contract's back. Companies like Ubisoft now, who are basically trying to put out an Assassin's Creed game every year, which is crazy to think about, obviously can't afford the luxury of laying off and restaffing every time because the game development never stops.
Yeah. Anyway, my point was, I don't know, what was I getting at? I think that Nintendo was a little bit different in that it does have teams that seem to be, you know, attached to a specific franchise, and they don't seem to be allowed to do much else. But yeah, I don't know. Where am I going with this? I'm sorry.
No, it's an interesting point because because you have seemingly more of the that kind of lasting effect of people who have been in the building for decades in some cases, and you know, even the lower levels, seemingly there's a relative stability there. You've got more kind of scope in some respects for what Sean refers to as design blindness. I guess in a general sense you might say like tunnel vision would be kind of the phrases of just that your sort of parameters become so kind of rigidly defined that you only sort of see things in one particular way. And you know, you kind of just keep attacking the problem, or of making more games, in that same way over and over again, and it doesn't have any kind of broader sense of like rethinking what the parameters should be. I guess the fact that Nintendo has people staying around for longer, in that sense, you might think they might be more prone to that setting in. But of course, it would seem Sean doesn't feel that way because he talks about how they keep how they've managed to keep the releasing great games consistently. So it is interesting what they what things they do to try and avoid this. We do hear some talk about from time to time about that they do value sort of the input of people that are not necessarily kind of steeped in games the way that a lot of people in the building are going to be, and in Nintendo games specifically. But then again, there's plenty of stuff that Nintendo does that is much very iterative. I mean, you can't really say that it isn't. But they generally do a pretty good job of that sort of thing too. So
yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild. One of the reasons why it got so much praise was because it broke the mold of past games.
Right, a mold that hadn't been broken in a while.
Yeah,
like people were complaining about Ocarina of Time being kind of the template for all the 3D Zelda games that followed, and Nintendo seemed to be afraid to deviate from that outside of, a gimmick or two.
I would argue Skyward Sword really actually started that deviation. Like we gave that game some shit, but like the idea of putting things out of the dungeon and into the game world itself, like we started seeing more like that in the 2D games. There was a ton of puzzle solving in the world, but there really wasn't much of that at all in the 3D games.
No. That's right.
And Skyward Sword, you start seeing these things come out. In fact, the most interesting puzzle in that game was the whole like time distortion boat ride.
Yeah, the time shift stone sort of thing coming into play on a big environmental scale rather than just a room in a dungeon.
So you started seeing like these weird things get shifted out of what was normally dungeon gameplay and put into the world. So in that way, you know, we started seeing things change on Skyward Sword, but it was this weird imperfected change. We're like, well, the puzzles are what matter. Whereas in what we saw instead was that no, in Breath of the Wild, the puzzles are hyper segregated into this one spot. And the game sort of distilled them down into just their most pure form and then just said, the exploring, the stuff that got taken out in Skyward Sword, really. In fact, that was what we were complaining about at the time, was like, we just fly to a place and then drop. That was then really elevated up. And I think what you're seeing, and so I can kind of apply my own work into this, because, you know, I do software. And there's been this sort of transition over the last decade in software development away from like siloing off your developers into developer land and your owners and your like business people into business land. And the business people come and say, we want to do this. How do you do it? And then they go away for like 3 months. And then you come back and say, I have built you this thing. Are you happy with it? And then they say, nay, that is not what I wanted. I wanted this. By having the idea of product, where essentially there isn't just like, this is the development team, this is the business side. They all kind of live together and they're constantly sort of percolating ideas. And Nintendo kind of already did that because they've got these teams that are focused on a product. This is the Zelda product team. They go and they make Zelda and they iterate on Zelda. But doing that also lets you do these like really fast experiments where you can try things and get feedback and do these iteration loops. And because you siloed things together like that, it's easy to go across to another group and say, I want you to look at this thing I have made and tell me what you think about it. One of the things Nintendo has mentioned in interviews a lot recently is that they're getting a lot of questions because people like Miyamoto are getting up there in age. And people who are like that one generation behind them are moving into senior roles where they're not necessarily making games directly anymore. They talk about how bringing in new people has allowed them to, younger people has allowed them to say, okay, these people made, or either they aren't people who are big into gaming and they brought them in because they're artists or whatever, or they are, and they're bringing their ideas and sort of pushing them forward into what these games are. And they're challenging what's been happening internally. I think you see this, though, largely anywhere you've got a creative media. Because if you just keep hiring people who already work in the space, you're going to end up with 6 versions of Law and Order. Now, that may be incredibly profitable, but, like, that doesn't get you to the place of being able to create a new idea completely separate from where that is. But ultimately, I don't think that's why Nintendo consistently makes good games. I think it's because they consistently are willing to say, like, this game is itself. It's not, this game isn't a milestone on our fiscal budget. It's like, this is a game that is being developed and it will be released when it is complete.
Yeah, I mean,
because we've certainly seen where they fucked that up. Mario Tennis Ultra Smash, where it's like, no, this game is a bullet point on a calendar and it's got to go. And I mean, Ultra Smash, apparently its mechanics feel not super dissimilar from Ace's, but like you can see the difference.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've always thought that it's because Nintendo, they don't look at themselves as necessarily a video game maker. They look at themselves as a toy maker that makes video games. So
sure,
they aren't shackled by the constraints of a company that says, we are a game maker. We make RPGs that are like this, or we make fighting games that are like this, or, you know what I mean? So that they're not sitting there necessarily making cookie cutter concepts. Not that games like that are necessarily cookie cutter, because they're iterative and there is always improvement between games. Like in the Elder Scrolls series, for instance, those games improve over time and they're really good. But at the same time, you wouldn't see them doing something as daring as Nintendo does. Nintendo says, how can we entertain people with a video game, but not necessarily a video game? There may be some other elements in there rather than, I think a lot of other companies are like, we have to make another video game. This is the template that we're working off of. Let's go iterate on that.
It would be and it would be Breath of the Wild level kind of shocking if, they said, this is our next Elder Scrolls game. It is not in the Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, Skyrim, in that continuum of games. It has stepped out from outside of that to being its own. Like we sort of blew it up and went back. But what you would see instead, and you're seeing this with Fallout right now with Fallout 76, is that they had this whole base building thing in Fallout. God, what was the last one? Fallout 5, I guess. 4, yeah. That was popular, and they didn't talk about this a whole lot at E3 because I think the blowback when it was leaked kind of probably softened their willingness to talk about it. But apparently that game really features this base building stuff, so it was like something that was out there, and then they've hard iterated on it and said like this is what we want to focus on, which is just as valid a way to test out ideas because let's say they put it out there and people just fucking hated it. Okay, well, we didn't spend too much time on it. We've killed it, and now we'll try something else for the next game until we find that thing people like, and then we can elevate that to be a more core mechanic. That's just as valid approach of testing. You don't overcommit to a new idea. You let the audience tell you what they like, and then you just sort of raise that up, and you see what you get. You could, in theory, if you're making a small enough, nimble enough development effort on a game, just leak things that aren't true, or leak things that are ideas that haven't been done yet, and gauge the reaction that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen that, and sometimes I've wondered where a company will put out a blog and say, yeah, we plan on making these changes, and then everyone goes ape shit, and they're like, oh yeah, we're not going to do that. And I've seen that, and I've looked back and said, did they do that on purpose just to gauge the reaction?
Yeah, it's like a 404 test.
Like I wouldn't think they would do that because it's a huge waste of time. But sometimes I have to wonder:
is it more of a waste of time than putting out a game people don't like?
Yeah. Where that actually happens organically, that can, I think, have a sort of a similar effect, to what Sean's talking about here from the outside instead of just the inside, instead of just kind of people on the inside and the whole kind of when all you have is a hammer thing going on.
Right.
It kind of like the famous example with DQ9 on DS, and the fact that the original thought was to go more kind of action in the design. And there was a huge amount of blowback about that, and then it went far more towards the traditional turn-based Dragon Quest style. So it's not always internal factors that kind of create this, desire to just iterate along very set lines. Because sometimes when something is that successful, is that beloved, that people even, and of course you've got a fan base that big, there might be millions who are open to change, but you don't hear from them because they're not up in arms about it. So,
right.
The people who feel aggrieved are the ones you hear because they're going to be loudest, and then that has kind of a chilling effect on any willingness for people to do things more differently. So, it isn't just, I think, a case of internal factors that can lead to this, and especially if you're talking about something that requires a lot of money to make. There's an inherent conservatism to that, so that's not really a creative thing. It's just, if the people that are bankrolling it are having to put so much money into it to begin with, they're just going to be risk averse in all likelihood. But the other thing I would say is for Nintendo, I guess, is that these days, with the integration of all the teams, it does, and the fact that we're probably, we say this, the 3DS is still sort of bobbing along, but focusing all those integrated teams on one platform primarily, you would hope that it would be easier for them to have that kind of exchange of people and ideas and perspectives than it's been in the past. So that if there's a particular kind of situation with a game or a series where a bit of a different perspective, so that people within the company have gleaned from working on different kind of games could bring to it, that could actually happen now that it's a lot less segregated than it used to be internally.
Yeah, and just having resource fungibility, like you could do something like, okay, I'm gonna send you over there for a month just to see what they're doing. Like literally just cross-pollinate for the sake of doing it. If you're working on 5 different engines on 2 or 3 different platforms. Like, good luck. You can only send. I mean, granted, you can only send like the Tokyo team over to Kyoto because they're both working on Switch games, but they're probably not working in the same tech. So like, good luck. Yeah, it's probably just. I mean, to me, it just seems like it's a matter of care and want to. Nintendo is perfectly capable of releasing a bad game that's just full of blindness. I mean, I honestly believe that describes Star Fox Zero's control scheme. I think they got a little bit up their own ass with that game. And
right, and it's not because of the developer. It's more the decisions seem to come from the top, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, if the people making that game day to day had just said, like, these controls don't work, I don't think that game would have come out in the state it did. But I think they probably played that game in a state where it was, like, really hard to play. And they probably sat there and they refined it, like he's talking about. They refined it. They made changes. They had like little breakthroughs where like, oh, actually, the chicken walker thing feels good here. Or they would polish out levels to get stuff where like what they had built didn't feel quite right. And to them, where that thing ended up, it probably felt quite evolved and
it's a relative thing rather than an absolute thing, and yet the old a frog in boiling water and all that kind of stuff you could think of. But I mean, I have a feeling it may have that I kind of agree with Guillaume. I think the fact that it was sort of Miyamoto's it was his passion or his kind of pet project, or may have limited people's willingness to kind of speak about it. I mean, personally, I think the controls work. I like them, but I do think if it had been more kind of aggressively looked at by people outside and people that were kind of unconstrained about expressing their opinions to Miyamoto, they might have found that they didn't appeal to a lot of people.
Well, and even Miyamoto himself could have made that call. He's not above going like, I don't like how this is working. Start over.
Oh yeah, that's true. When it occurs to him to do it, yeah. But that's the whole point. Is that's it's never going to occur to a single person to do that in every case. That's why you have these kinds of countermeasures, these kinds of, the need for different perspectives to kind of have that ability to kind of change if need be. And like I said, I mean, I to me, the controls in Star Fox Zero is kind of a big part of the appeal because it makes it different. Because a lot of things about it are not different because it's so Star Fox 64 leveraged. And again, I think that probably limited people's willingness to, because it's like that's the gag. Like that's the punchline. That's it's kind of like, well, it's like this, but it's different now because 2 screens and all that. And I really do think mechanically, they work. I found it to be fun, but I don't think it's a great idea for a commercial product because not enough people share my opinion.
Right. And then you go back to the question all the way back up of, okay, well, if the concern is this is too much like Star Fox 64, maybe that's the start problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's definitely, some kind of, sort of, there's some tunnel vision in that area. Like Star Fox 64 is sort of the definition of Star Fox, and it's kind of difficult for us to really want to move past that. And I think you see that with F-Zero as well. The whole thing of basically just this idea of like, oh no, you can't do anything interesting with F-Zero.
Right.
That's why there haven't been any games for like 13 years. It's just like, well, this is all that it is, and it's all it ever can be, so what's the point?
Right. All right. Well, let's get one more email in, and then we'll take a break. Greg.
Yes.
Would you read Derek's email?
Yeah. Derek writes, hello, gents. With the well of Wii U games re-releasing on Switch running dry, I've been thinking about what great Wii games deserve another chance on the Switch. And but funnily enough, this was before we heard about Carnival Games coming back.
The game that will not die.
If there is one thing the Wii did exceptionally well, it is that it brought many unique, creative, and exclusive experiences to the platform by third parties. Games like Mad World, No More Heroes, Zack and Wiki, Red Steel 2, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles The Crystal Bearers, Lost in Shadow, The Last Story, Pandora's Tower, and more. What are some games that you would like to see remade or ported to Nintendo Switch from the Wii era? All the best, gents, and thank you for making the best Nintendo podcast out there.
Woo!
I like the idea of Pandora's Tower being remade for Switch, but it seems like maybe it would be a waste of resources. I don't think it would get a shot at being recognized for, being one of the best damn games that exist.
One of the best games at forcing you to take a vegetarian and turn them into a bloodthirsty monster. Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I'd be lying if I didn't want to see Steve Hewitt die a noble death on the go.
Thank you, John.
I mean,
yes. Screw, any get Monolith off whatever they do, a Xenoblade X2 or anything like that. Get them off that.
Yeah. Now's the time. Strike while the iron is hot.
It's time. They've got a new studio making a new game. Cancel the new game. Have them remake that piece of shit instead.
Hey,
I need my head-sized burgers in HD. Do you think I'm going to let you do an up-res? No, this is a ground-to-sky remake, but change nothing. Leave it exactly the same, but remake it from scratch. The Last Story is a great one, especially if they could put the online stuff back in.
That really needs to come back. I was kind of doing because I missed out on it on Wii. I mean, so obviously that and Pandora's Tower were both like super late on Wii, so they didn't have the chance. We unlike Wii U, it had this massive install base. So you say, well, do we need to kind of give those games a second chance as much as you do with games on Wii U? But some of those late ones, didn't really have that much.
Those games were real late in North America.
Especially with the way that Nintendo of America treated them. I mean, like, very, very late. But as we've sort of talked about before, the bottom sort of fell out of the Wii market much faster than Nintendo ever seemed to anticipate, and so some of these games, which I'm not suggesting that they would ever have been blockbusters with the best, most favourable timing you could ever imagine, but they did not have that. I mean, it was tough for them, so I think there's an argument to be made on that basis. And Last Story didn't come back like as a digital game on Wii U, whereas Xenoblade did, Pandora's Tower did. I didn't. I was kind of hoping that would happen, and that would be my chance to play it. It never did, so I'm still kind of looking in that respect.
How about the entirety of the output of Skip? On WiiWare, like they could. I mean, I'm serious. Like they put out. Actually, I'm not sure if they're involved with all of them, but the what were they called? The
art style, yeah.
Art style, right? Yeah. So Orbiant and all that stuff could, make a nice compilation on the Switch. And I mean, there were good games on the Wii, but most of them came from the Game Boy, the GBA, and they're just better suited for portable play. So I don't know. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's we've kind of covered again the fact that Wii, hugely successful system, but some of the ways that they kind of dealt with the WiiWare platform kind of meant that a lot of WiiWare games didn't necessarily get the most kind of exposure that they could have done. And so, I think you look at some of the things that do well on Switch, and it would be a pretty suitable kind of venue for them, and there's some great stuff in there.
I think some of the stuff we've talked about on this one, Trauma Team, I think it did get released on Wii U, digitally, but like
certainly in Japan, I think it did.
Yeah, that game
I'm not sure elsewhere.
It needs a lot of work to be playable away from the Wii, obviously, but it's really stupid in the best way possible. Like,
it's an interesting mix, isn't it? There's some sort of like whimsical elements and then some terribly dark elements kind of rubbing up against each other in some weird ways.
but also like the ultimate plot conceit is as dumb as you can possibly imagine. But really only possible if you also wrote the game, because there's no way a normal human being could have imagined how stupid that was going to get. But it's fun, and you get invested in this dumb plot, and like so, I really enjoyed that. I think the Endless Ocean games could very easily be remade in a way that is especially the second one with what's his name and his fire dive suit.
I never had the second one myself. So I can't
the second one is bonkers nonsense. But you meet this other diver anyway. He's kind of a showboat asshole, and he has like a fire. Like his dive suit is just covered in flames. You know, the thing you have underwater. But you know, there's stuff like stuff that I've talked about in Moment, like Sakura Wars, which only came out very small things. Is this kind of a weird strategy RPG visual novel nonsense game that the Western release was really bad because they stripped out all the music because they didn't want to pay. So it's just like chiptune versions of the music. But also that game doesn't support like progressive scan on Wii. Like, what the fuck?
Well, I think Mad World actually falls
Mad
into
World
that
has the same problem.
Yeah. That Derek mentions there, which I never got around to, Mad World, because it was messed up in PAL regions. Because not only was it not progressive, but it was like locked in the 50 hertz mode and all, which is a bad choice for a Platinum game. I would imagine. You know, it's nothing to do with Platinum, but if they could understand, you know, if they were made aware of it, they'd probably throw up the notion of it. But, yeah, I'm not sure if the game kind of merits it, but the fact that Nintendo's kind of closeness with Platinum has grown over the years, you would think it is, but of course it's a Sega thing, ultimately.
Yep. You've got some weirder stuff in there, like the infamous Fragile Dreams plays like shit, but it's really fun. But it's really like captivating to play. It's really that weird stuff that's out there on the edge. You know, Klonoa is itself a remake.
Yeah.
But if you were to remake Klonoa again, remake the remake,
which apparently did not sell that well. I don't think.
No.
You know, that kind of stymied any momentum for further development of the Klonoa sort of franchise.
But like it's a really good game.
Yeah, no, I like the remake. That was my first time playing it, and it was pretty nice.
There's stuff like that. I mean, we had our big WiiWare retroactive. So basically none of the stuff we played.
Yeah, no shit.
But there's, you know, like there's My Life as a King, which is a really good game. There's Dark Lord, which is probably less needs to be remade because it's not that special. And then conversely, there's the other game that's like My Life as a King, Little King Story, that I always flip the two in my head when I try to say their name, which did get remade and re-released on the Vita, but apparently that version sucks.
Right, also on PC.
On PC, which I think is the Wii version.
Yes, I think so.
And so it's not shitty like the Vita version was. But stuff like that, like weird, like really hyper niche stuff that just could use another chance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the stuff like, you know, something like Fluidity.
Sure. I'd take it. That'd
be
work.
cool. I mean, yeah, that would play actually really well on the Switch.
Yeah, like everything WiiWare comes to mind to me just for the reasons that Greg mentioned. Just like they
not
didn't really...
everything WiiWare.
Well, no, but I mean, like it's mostly WiiWare stuff because they, I don't know. I guess the small file size would fit well with the 32 gigs of memory that the Switch has. So you know, so that's one less worry. But also, yeah, like not as many people have been exposed to those games, and I think that Reggie came out and said that most successes on the eShop seem to cater to people's nostalgia. So you've got stuff like Konami's Rebirth series. You know, like the Castlevania game is not that great, but the Contra game is really, really good. Yeah, there's a ton of stuff that people missed out on. Other than that, like there's some other games that didn't really make a splash like the Prince of Persia Forgotten Sands game on the Wii, which was a different game from Prince of Persia the Forgotten Sands on every other platform. So that didn't help it to get people to try it. Also, it came out the day that Super Mario Galaxy 2 came out. But at the same time, I'm not sure if there's like a hunger for Prince of Persia games right now. So, yeah, and it was very pointer heavy. It was very much dependent on the pointer.
I think now might be the time to do a Prince of Persia push since it's been a while.
Yeah, but because of the pointer use, I kind of think that the game is stuck on the Wii forever.
Well, we've already seen World of Goo come back. I mean, there's sort of precedent for that sort of thing.
I suppose so. Yeah, maybe. And when you're playing portably, maybe you just replace the pointer with touch.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can solve all the game's problems. All right, anybody have any else they want to do real quick?
You could probably do something cool now with Wii Music thanks to Labo. I bet you could probably have some cool kind of crossover with that.
That sounds pretty good actually.
Oh man, you could make your own cardboard instruments.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, I already got them. Like, you might as well insert a switch in there and make them work.
There you go. All right. Well, that is going to do it for the first act of our email show. When we return,
WarioWare smooth moves. Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Nice.
Well, Punch Out in Rhythm Heaven. There. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Moving on. We're going to go ahead and take a. No, we're going to take a break. Fuck you, John Lindemann.
And Conduit 2.
Go to break.
Thank you, Space Lincoln. When we come back, Greg and I will be here to talk more email. These two will have been kicked off. Stay tuned.
The Conduit duology.
We're back with more listener mail. We're going to get right to it. Guillaume, would you read our next email?
Brian writes, "Hello, RFN crew. A few weeks ago, as if though God were trying to convince me of his existence, I found a SNES classic at Target. Giving each game a quick look-see, I was surprised to find that Kirby's Dream Course was a golf game, and the even greater surprise was that I was actually enjoying golf game, which even Mario can't do. I began to think of all the other Kirby spin-offs I've enjoyed, like Block Ball, Canvas Curse, and Air Ride, kinda. What other genres do you think could use a dose of the pink gluttonous blob? Challenge, instead of giving serious answer first and devolving into bullshit answer, can you begin with the bullshit answers and transition into serious answers?"
What if we just gave bullshit answers?
Well,
I mean, the question is, what is a bullshit answer when dealing with Kirby? Like, what is like we talk about like what's the floor here? And I mean, Kirby's style savvy is probably the floor. Like, if you're gonna go with Nintendo franchises, like that's about as far down as you can go, where you have to dress up Kirby, who historically never wears clothes, but also is a sphere. So good luck trying to stitch.
Right, he wears clothes when he's transformed.
Yeah, he wears hats.
Yeah, but Style Savvy's got to have full costumes. Good luck stitching pants for that.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Walking Simulator, just for the irony value of doing it with a character who has no legs.
Can you float in the game, or no?
No, it's a walking simulator, not a floating simulator.
That in no way simulates walking.
It's a walking simulator. Could you do it like, instead of being walking simulator as the pejorative of games that don't really have a lot of interactive segments, or maybe not even games, just like story conveyance mechanisms, it be like DK King of Swing, where it's literally a walking simulator, like it's just the shoulder buttons make him move his feet.
Oh, a co-op kind of game where you kind of
But unlike co-op, you're not going to fall because Kirby's center of gravity is so low. It's just like the L1, R1 make his feet go forward, or LR make his feet go forward, LZ, RZ make them go backwards. So you just have him walk that way. That's the whole game. Does he go uphill ever, or is it just level ground? First person or third? 2D or 3D? Like these are the big questions that need to be answered.
Like any kind of genre that I would think like, oh, wouldn't that be stupid, has kind of already been done. Like,
Kirby.
Even like RPG, I mean, they kind of make fun of that in the Kirby Superstar.
A proper Kirby RPG would be kind of outrageous. Like, what would his powers be? Because he loses them constantly. How would you gain skills?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a project for BioWare, for the team that made the Sonic RPG game.
It's true. I mean, they've already proven to be experts.
Sonic Chronicles: The Dark Brother.
The Dark Brother. Honestly, that name sounds like Sonic fanfiction.
Yeah, it really does.
It sounds like something. It's like that'd be on fanfiction.net, and it'd be like a crossover with like the fucking Hardy Boys or something. It'd be just like, oh, this is Sonic the Dark Brotherhood and the Cave of Pirate Gold.
Speaking of I don't know, I guess fan fiction, like how about a Kirby visual novel in the vein of 999 and Virtue's Last Reward? Yes. And either you have Kirby die like thousands of gruesome deaths, or Kirby is the monster, like Kirby is kind of
Kirby is the monster would be pretty good.
The monster that every character falls prey to, and I don't know, I think it could work. I don't even know if this is my bullshit answer or my actual anser.
That's how you know it's the good answer.
That's
how you know it's a good. He challenged us to start at bullshit and get to good, but what if nobody can tell the difference?
Yeah, that's like the whole the shortest distance between 2 points isn't a straight line; it's folding space. The same point.
I like the idea of a Kirby art game where you just draw Kirby.
I think my bullshit answer would be a football game with Jerry Rice. That would be my answer.
Is Kirby the ball, or is he a player?
I don't know. He could be both.
Well, he's eaten Neatus or whatever and replaced him.
That's true. He's just got like a dog, like a dog mask on.
Yeah.
Oh god.
He just has the dog ears.
Yep.
It's terrible.
Jerry Rice and Nidus and Kirby football plus Knuckles, like you just get all the way in there. Oh god.
Ooh, you could have Kirby teaches typing, and it never gets past the point. It never gets past the point where you use 2 fingers. Yeah.
It was just I. That's all you ever type.
Exactly.
I do like with the visual novel or like the Kirby dating sim where it's just like, but you're not dating Kirby, you are Kirby in it with his inability to communicate effectively, trying to talk to women. He just goes the whole time. It's like your choices are just various texts like that. Oh, that would be that. That probably exists on itch somewhere. Someone's probably already made that.
Like Kirby Love Plus or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, there's already a dating sim where you date pigeons. Like, there's no end to this train. But like, what's a serious Kirby game? Like the most bullshit answer I can come up with is a skill-based 2D platformer. Like heavy skill driven. Like,
You've never played these games on hard mode, have you?
I have, Like what would it? Because so Kirby Dream Course is a golf game, but also it's got like a little bit of bowling in it too.
Yeah,
because you have to hit all the targets. It is really good,
and it's very puzzle driven. In many respects, if you're actually gonna get to the hole in as few shots as possible and using different powers and all that. I mean, it's definitely one of the most kind of involved in how it weaves the kind of Kirbiness into the game rather than it just be kind of slapping his visage on the box or something.
Well, and where the hole is on the course is going to be whichever enemy you didn't kill. It's the last enemy left.
Yeah, that's the last one, yeah.
And so you don't want to put it someplace that's going to be miserable to get to the hole, like on the side of a hill.
Nice. It kind of adds an extra layer of agency to a kind of crazy golf or mini golf style game.
Yeah. It is really good. Like it's really, really good. Kirby Monster Truck Racing? Like, I don't know. Like what's
Yeah, so you think if the Excite Truck, Excite Bots kind of
Excite Blob.
lineage
Yeah.
stalled, then just Kirby's eaten a massive monster truck. And
No, he's eaten the 6 polygon faced drivers from Excite Truck. They were just like a hexagon face.
And now is on to. Oh, you mean Excite Bike 64?
No, Excite Truck on Wii. The faces of the drivers were notoriously like only 5 polygons.
Oh, really? I can't even remember those.
Because you can only see them if in the truck, like when you're driving, because they didn't bother.
Yeah.
So it just looked hilarious. But he eats one of those drivers, and now he is the Excite Truck driver. And it's exactly the same, except it's Kirby and his truck is pink.
I mean, you could have like Kirby gear where, some stealth Kirby action where you could sneak up behind guards and swallow them whole. But it would be Kirby. It would be like an older Kirby, grizzled. Like smoking.
Like a beard, an older Kirby?
I mean, he literally has already kind of like the assets, like the sprite for that.
It's true.
Yeah, it exists from Brawl, and the forthcoming Ultimate would have it, Snake Kirby. But I like the idea of the sort of boss fight in the vein of Snake Eater, where you get you're confronted with all the things you've eaten throughout the course of the game.
A Kirby music game is either the bullshit answer or the real one, and I'm not sure.
To be fair, I mean, we had Donkey Konga. Like that
we did.
Happens. Like, sometimes puns make games.
Puns don't make games. People make games, Greg.
I mean, let's be fair. I don't think Donkey Kong would have been attached to that game if it wasn't for the wordplay value.
God damn it.
It was not the most obvious. It's like, which of our characters goes best with the rhythm game? Donkey Kong? Yeah, obviously, yeah.
I want that to have just been a shit take answer in the meeting. I was like, Donkey Konga, obviously. Come on.
And people wonder why they're having a change out of green light games.
And then that person walks back in the room after going to the bathroom and like they've already drawn up some art. Oh no, what have I done? Which is probably a plot to like Black Mirror season 3 at this point. Guy accidentally green lights a game. Like, what would Kirby's powers actually contribute to, like, meaningfully in as a game itself? Like, because it's gotta be something where, I mean, they've done everything. Like, fuck, they've done everything. I mean, you could maybe do like a fighting game.
They already did.
Yeah.
They kind of they downloadable form on the 3DS.
Yeah, it was sort of a spin-off from Triple Deluxe.
Like, they've done a racing game.
They've done kind of a Pikmin kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, Mass Attack was pretty good. Besides its name, which is weird as shit. They've done all kinds of platformers. I mean, maybe a true 3D platformer? They've never done that. But, like, that would require them spend money on a Kirby game.
Yeah, also
it's somewhat antithetical to what the game's about.
To some extent, a funny thing is, imagining a 3D Kirby is a little bit like Odyssey.
Yeah, a little bit. With the hats and stuff, you're kind of already
taking
there.
on the sort of forms or powers of the enemies around you. They've kind of trodden all over the ground for a 3D Kirby with Mario Odyssey.
Shit, they did, didn't they? Fuck. Like, legitimately, like, I'm kind of at a loss. I mean, unless you want to make a Kirby first-person shooter, at which point, like, what's all you're gonna know your Kirby is the noise he makes and the little pink nubs in front of your face. I mean,
Kirby Royale? I don't know.
100 Kirbys fall out of an airplane and very, very slowly drift to ground. That would be pretty good. Fall off a warp star, excuse me. I I do like the stealth though. Like Guillaume's joke about stealth is kind of funny because like, what would Kirby do in a stealth game? Because he announces his presence constantly.
It was John, but
It was John.
yeah.
Okay, my mistake.
I don't know.
Have we been asked?
We could plot Kirby in all sorts of like Kirby in Resident Evil 4, Kirby.
Yeah,
in,
but they've already done Kirby in Resident Evil. It was the tofu unlock character. Like we've kind of seen where that goes. Maybe a proper like Mario RPG style thing with Kirby, but that really leans into the fact that Kirby might be rather simple.
Maybe he could change class by just like eating his party members.
It's true. That would be pretty funny. Like if your party members are actually equipment, not characters. That's dark. That's actually really dark. Kirby strategy RPGs, like what's really what is? You could actually do a Kirby tower defense where Kirby is both the tower and the mechanism of defense, because he just consumes the enemies coming and then uses the power. So the challenge would be, how do you, like, when do you decide to change powers? And maybe you have like a maximum usage on a power, kind of like some of the super skills that hit like microphone and bomb and stuff. And so you have to say like, okay, I need to jump out of this power and grab another one because this group's coming. Like there's a certain amount of that you could probably make as a small game, because there's puzzle, there's management, there's that kind of stuff in there. And it is technically another genre. So I guess I'm off the hook for giving a serious answer because I just did. Yay. Y'all fuckers are done though, so good luck. Anybody got anything else?
No.
Yeah.
All right then, we're gonna punch out of this Kirby chat. John.
All right. Pete writes, so when I first listened to RFN, I hated James.
Me too.
Like, just outright hated him.
Yeah.
Somewhere between his blunt descriptions and overall demeanor made him sound way too authoritative on the quality of the games he was covering. It put me off. Fast forward a few episodes and it became increasingly clear that he was very experienced in the content he covered, and that those hot takes came from a place of legitimacy. He went from being the guy I rolled my eyes at to my favorite voice on the podcast. RFN is the first podcast that I listen to every week, the only one that I don't have a backlog on, and while I loved a lot of you, if I hear any voice other than James 3 seconds in, implying an absence because that person is now the host, it is a little disheartening. James Jones was basically a sleeper hit of a podcaster for me.
Like,
wow.
Honestly, I wanted... So first off, I didn't pick the email. Secondly, I wanted to cut that part out, but at the same time, like, I want the part where I'm being made fun of. But it leads into the answer, so I have to leave the other part, because this is the real question.
Mm-hmm.
John, if you please.
It's happened to me with games as well. I hated Ian in the PlayStation 1 version of Dead or Alive. I guess that is the first one, right?
Yep.
Ayane, sorry.
Yep.
I couldn't stand the Backlash and Blast Core. Doom was never my cup of tea, and I pretty much hated all of Super Smash Bros. 64. Well, today, Ayane's my main. I'm deadly with any princess that Smash 4 has to offer. I beat 2016's Doom over the course of a week, and with no weekend days while keeping my job and sleep. And I kind of wish they'd bring Blast Core back. Also, I waffle stomped that one Backlash stage with the hidden giant robot I never found out about. What personal sleeper hits, in games or out of them, does the RFN crew remember fondly now, but didn't at their respective initial release? P.S. I also hated Linderman at first, but now I own literally hundreds of games that I've never played, and thanks to that one charity-ish store owned by IGN, I haven't even activated them on my Steam account. Okay, the former part of that was a lie.
I almost fixed the spelling. I was like, no, I'm going to leave it. It was funnier that way.
So the first part was Stockholm Syndrome. And
I was going to say, thank you, Pete.
And the PS is Lindemann Syndrome.
That's right.
Thank you, Pete, for this remarkable demonstration of Stockholm Syndrome, and it's just...
It happens to the best
powerful.
of us. So what game? So the question is, what games like did you originally play back when they came out and thought like, man, I'm not liking this, and then at some point later, We're like, oh, actually, you know what? I really like this. Or maybe not even a game. It could be a concept because he talks about like Smash.
Yeah,
he's obviously talking about
genre
the same
maybe.
Smash.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well.
So I actually have one here, which is kind of in that space, where I growing up really only cared about for scrolling shooters, cared about a very hyper specific style of scrolling shooter, which is the vertical scrolling shooter, specifically things like Tehran and 1942 and stuff like that. And like, if you went sideways, fuck this shit. And it's not just like a perspective thing. Those games play differently. Like
usually, yeah. I mean, how much? A lot of the time, kind of the vertical ones tend to be faster paced, more kind of about kind of dodging and stuff, less about like environments and more about like bullet patterns and things like that. You know,
yeah.
It was kind of sort of weird when you play like something like Life Force or Salamander that has kind of Gradius design concepts just put in a vertical game. You kind of notice the difference then.
It feels weird.
Yeah.
Or when you have a game that feels more like Terran 2000 and they've turned it sideways and you're like, the fuck is this shit? Like, because there was this weird era where like those were still coming out, but then they were putting things like story on top of them, and it was very odd. But I actually really like Gradius now, like a lot, like a whole lot. It's not like I never thought they were bad games. It was just always like, ugh, this isn't what I want. This is in the wrong direction, which sounds super reductionist, but obviously it's not really what I'm saying. But part of that may as well have come down to the fact that they weren't making the vertical ones anymore. And like in my brain, I had kind of said like, well, they have replaced the thing I like with the thing that's not the thing I like, therefore I hate it.
Yeah. Did you have a TurboGrafx as a kid?
I wish I did because
you would have ate
it up. But no, like I played a bunch of those games as a kid because I actually had an arcade, and so I would go play them in arcades. And these were, even growing up, I was born in the late '80s, so a lot of these games were old when I was playing them.
Yeah.
But the arcade I had, I didn't say it was a good arcade. So it had a lot of these older scrolling shooters. And so that was kind of what I played. They didn't have a bunch of Gradius machines because those were more recent. And probably cost more money than a 1942 machine. And so, like, that's what I played. That's what I got used to. And that's kind of what I liked. And so when it was not that, it was always quite difficult for me to adapt to it and go like, okay, this isn't the thing I like, but it's still good. Whereas now I'm so far removed from having played those games. It's not even like something I pined to go play them because it's been 20 years or whatever. And so like I was able to play those other shooters kind of, open mind and be like, oh, these are really fun. I like this. It's not, it's not parodious. It's not fucking nonsense bullshit all the time, but like I can play this game. Even I see the relation between these other games I played, but I'm able to appreciate, like the fact that they usually have like upgrade systems and stuff and pickups and ads and those kinds of things are much more prevalent in those horizontal games, and a lot of reasons because those horizontal games tended to be newer. They came later, and therefore all these things were in them that just didn't exist before. I think on the same token, the original Mega Man games, like I didn't have a great affinity for Mega Man 1 and 2 because I was quite young when those came out. My Mega Man started in the Super Nintendo era. And so it was really, those games have some fucking bullshit in them, those NES ones. But now I can appreciate what they are, except for Mega Man 1, which is just trash.
I like it.
It's like I played it 2 weeks ago, and I am shocked at how bad some of the levels are.
Yeah, I don't know what Pete was on about with those blunt descriptions. I haven't heard any.
No. To be fair, look, go play Mega Man 1 right now.
I've never. I've only played the PSP remake thing, which is very
exactly.
Different.
It is hard. Like Mega Man is hard as hell. It is so difficult.
Yeah,
just
a lot of it's just because they haven't refined the controls yet. Like, Mega Man feels a little bit different. And I mean, I know that because I went and played Mega Man 1, Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3 on the same flight. Mega Man 1 feels appreciably different than 2 and 3. It's not hugely different, but, like, you can tell they made tweaks. But they also learned how to design stages around it better. So, like, it's punishing, but a lot of times it's just punishing because the game's kind of fucked up. It's like, why did you do it like that? Well, we didn't know any better. Oh, okay. No, fair. That's a fair answer.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I haven't really got any quite to this extent in terms of individual games from something you really like, quite dislike to you love it kind of thing. I wouldn't say so. I've talked before about how Zero Mission went from kind of liked it to loved it over subsequent playthroughs and stuff like that before. But I guess the biggest one would probably be more on a genre level is RPGs, because it took me a good while to warm up to them. I mean, I've having not played any in the 8-bit era, which was kind of short-lived for me because I was similar to James. It was a little bit young for a lot of our stuff. Then on Super Nintendo, I played Link to the Past, and that, I guess the problem, and I was still pretty young even then, under 10, and it just kind of, anytime I play an RPG, sort of like Secret of Mana, which has some overlap with Link to the Past, I still kind of wanted it to be more like that, rather than, like accepting it for what it is.
Well, you'd been playing them in Japanese too, right?
Not Secret of Mana, and
okay.
By that point, in fact, Link to the Past was the first game we bought because they were fundamentally the same. The Super Famicom and the American Super Nintendo, turns out you didn't need like a really fancy converter. You just needed a converter to circumvent the different shape of the cartridges, and then they would work. So. Yeah, I played Link to the Past, and so I loved it, and then there would be very complimentary reviews for games like Secret of Mana in magazines, and it's like, okay, yeah, that looks like Zelda and seems like it's a bit similar, and then I'd get it, and I was like, it's different, and I didn't, and not having any background in RPGs, it just I was more focused on the ways it wasn't like Zelda in terms of like puzzle solving and that kind of thing, rather than what it was giving you that Zelda did not, in terms of the party and leveling up the characters and things like that. So it was a gradual process, kind of really probably somewhere through playing Chrono Trigger is kind of where the concept really started to click with me more fully. Of like, this genre, kind of makes more sense, and I like them, and I've never been a hugely avid RPG player compared to probably a lot of people, who've got a lot of fond memories bound up in the 16-bit era, but I definitely got to like them a lot better, and certainly handhelds have helped as well. Rather than just kind of getting older or whatever, just having portable systems that can host some absolutely terrific RPGs, just I'm more comfortable playing them in those settings than sitting in front of the TV with them a lot of the time.
Funnily enough, like this question would have been easiest for me to answer for you, because I was like, he's gonna say JRPGs. I know it's coming.
Yeah, well, we have been talking about this stuff for 10 years.
Yeah, but like you're right though, because the GBA era, you would have started to see the Super Nintendo ones get ported over, and the NES ones get remade on the GBA, and then DS, we sort of see this GBA. I mean, there are some GBA original JRPGs that are really good. There's not a ton of them, in part because the GBA didn't last that long.
Yeah.
But DS and 3DS, like, holy shit. And then 3DS, you start seeing remakes of stuff from, like, even there's some PS2 JRPGs on the 3DS.
Yeah.
Like, it is sort of this weird golden era of, like, the second golden age of JRPGs that kind of comes out from the Super Nintendo era. Which is weird, because, like, on Nintendo systems, it had gone completely dark for about 5 years. Damn, I want to go play a bunch of JRPGs now. I haven't done one in a while. I'm trying to behave myself.
To me, I think maybe I've already said it on this podcast, but for a while I didn't really enjoy Mario Kart. And part of that is because I didn't really, I didn't have the dorm N64 experience of playing multiplayer with, other people locally. But then, like, the GameCube came out and I was not really interested in Double Dash. And instead, I opted for F-Zero and I really enjoyed that. And I think it's mostly the strength of the single player that I was gauging, these various series by. And Mario Kart always has had this rubber banding, or this kind of it sets you up with this one opponent who's always going to be on your tail and who's going to be your rival. And
you can't kill him like in F-Zero.
Yeah. Exactly. So F-Zero had a way to manage them, but Mario Kart did not, and it was not a fun racing experience to me. I didn't really enjoy the DS version. Maybe I would have had if people hadn't discovered snaking so early. But once they did, I was like, okay, I don't want to play this anymore. So yeah, it wasn't until I bought very late Mario Kart Wii and played online with other people that I finally, enjoyed a Mario Kart game again. And, the wider tracks helped, the 12 racers at the time helped, and I was participating in kind of a community tournament, and so that also helped, of course. And not having really to touch the single player that much really, really helped. And since then, I think that Mario Kart games have been better. Like, they've been less rubber bandy, a little bit more fun to play, even in single player, despite the fact that they haven't evolved the single player modes all that much. There's no more mission like in the DS game or anything like that.
Yeah, if anything, it's kind of got dialed back a little bit because online has grown in prominence. Yeah,
but it just seems more fair somehow.
Oh, I think so. I think it's been getting better from through 7 and 8.
John,
I would say for me, I would say it would be the NES and Game Boys themselves. Game Boy.
the hardware or the games?
The
that were on
hardware,
them?
because back in the day, I was not a Nintendo fan. I was a Master System guy through and through. Sega.
Yeah, you had the weird the most 1980s looking console ever.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you had God, what was the SG-3000 actually called? That was a Master System, yeah.
Yeah, the Master System.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the one that went up against the NES. Yeah, so I had that first. I mean, I liked the games better because, see, it all started because I was a big fan of Space Harrier in the arcade, right? So as soon as I...
Yeah, that's what Sega was trying to sell it on, that they not just their own games, like, conversions of games like R-Type and all that, so
Yeah.
that was the push.
Yeah, so I loved their arcade games, and so I loved them as a company. And Nintendo at that time wasn't really that big in the arcades, and that was really my main exposure to games at that point. So, I mean, all the Nintendo games, they were already out of the arcades, or they were really old, or it was stuff like Popeye and stuff like that. And I was like, whatever, or like DK Jr., stuff like that, like just stuff where like that stuff was already old hat by the time stuff like Space Harrier was coming around, and the music was so great, it was just awesome. So as soon as I found out that they had a home console, I was completely on board, and I was kind of like down on the NES, like, because, to the point where like I'm looking at like, I had all that kind of like fanboy tech spec stuff, like, oh yeah, the NES only does this amount of colors. It can only put this amount of colors on the screen at one time, but the SMS can put this many amount of colors. Like, you know what I mean? I had all that kind of like ridiculous fanboyish kind of stuff going on. And the same thing with the Game Boy too, because the Game Boy, of course, versus the Game Gear. The Game Gear was like, LCD, and it was, all in color. Game Boy was, this like, dot matrix kind of old school looking thing. And so I was pretty much down on both of them until pretty much all of my friends all had an NES. And eventually I just caved and I bought an NES finally, I think in probably about maybe 88. And I bought Castlevania with it. So, yeah.
You went right in there.
I went right in there. Yeah, and so because I think so. I probably got the Master System in like probably 86 maybe. And I had it because I had it for a while before I had the NES. Like, I got the NES model that I got was the one that included that player's guide. It didn't include a pack-in game, so I never actually owned a physical copy of Super Mario Brothers. I never owned one because I didn't get it with my NES. I got the one that had the player's guide, right? So that's why I bought a game with it. So that was probably, I mean, the NES came out in the US in like 85, so it was like by the time that they were like, I mean, they were already putting out like new bundles by the time I even got around to buying an NES. So maybe it was 87, but it was, I mean, I was late to the game. It was at least 2 years after it had been out on the market that I bought an NES. And that was just because it was very obvious that it had just tons and tons of games. Everybody owned one. It just blew up, and I was like, all right, I might as well get one. And so, yeah. And then the Game Boy, I just never bought it because I was like, what an archaic piece of tech. Whatever. I don't want that. Get away from me. Kind of thing.
I like that you literally were the squirrel in the commercial I described a few episodes ago, talking about the color screen on the Game Gear.
Yep. Well, you know, that's what everything was back then. Like, it wasn't as homogenized. Like, it was like moving from 8-bit to 16-bit. Like, that was a huge deal. Like, everything was like, you know, bits and, you know, how much can this cartridge hold? Because that was like a big deal back then because there were so many games being made. It wasn't like now where it's like no one cares how big a game is. Everything is in HD or 4K or whatever.
Right.
It was much easier to market based on those things. Like, this is...
Well, people didn't really understand what those numbers meant anyway.
Yeah, it was kind of the buzz, which gives you stuff like blast processing with the Mega Drive, which is just totally meaningless, but they kind of...
It's a 128 megabit cartridge. Who gives a fuck?
But what I want to know is why did Master System games always have, like, the Mega cartridge on the artwork? Like, what
so there's actually a
cards
reason for that. Yeah, they had the Hue cards. They're not Hue cards, but they're basically Hue cards.
They were like what the PC engine.
Yeah, because the SG-1000, which is the predecessor to the Master System, it never came out here, accepted carts, and it accepted these cards, had a slot for them, like the Hue cards. And then by the time the 3000 rolls around, which is really just gets repackaged as the Master System later, that you had to buy an attachment to play those cards, but it could still play them.
Yes, I do remember hearing about the attachment, yeah.
And so those were the Mega cards, and those were the Mega cartridges, or something shitty like that.
Yeah, and it was also...
It was their way of, like, delineating, in Japan especially, I guess, that this is not an SG-1000 cartridge. Do not plug your SG-1000 into this game.
Yeah, and I think that also Sega's games, their cartridges were also, I think, typically bigger than Nintendo's, so they wanted to, like, again, market on that number stuff, like, oh, well, you know, this Nintendo game is 64 megabits, and ours is 256 megabits, so therefore it's several megabits better than Nintendo's games, like...
Yeah, Nintendo would love to use that. I remember, you know, like Super Metroid, it's 24 megabits. For DKC, it's 32 megabit. There's a reason why I still remember those numbers to this day.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was a huge deal.
Those were in the ads, the print ads, all the PR materials. They pushed that angle really, really hard. That's just how kind of silly that stuff was back then.
Like, I need to check, but I think it's on the freaking box. Like, it's on the front.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
both
those games, Super Metroid. And,
bearing in mind, for those of you who don't understand size, that is dramatically tiny by modern storage.
Yeah, really tiny. I mean, like, it wasn't.
These aren't megabytes, not megabytes. Not megabytes.
This is
megabits.
This is you could fit multiple copies of Super Metroid inside a photo of that your camera on your phone is taking.
I don't think they had it on the box. Naturally, they didn't have it on the box of the Japanese Super Metroid, but they changed quite a bit about that. Like, they made Ridley bright red for some reason, and they didn't make it better. That's for sure.
They made it different, and sometimes that's all that matters.
So this artwork's
Yeah, it's the
a bit
first
dark,
bullet point, 24 megs of action in the largest Super NES game ever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that may actually have... 24 is a really weird number.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was bits. That may have been bytes.
They're megs. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, I think megs, but it was
Just
mega
megs, man.
bits. Yeah.
Just megs. Mega.
Just
That's all you
megs. Just
need to know.
megs.
Mhm.
That's just megs.
Well, yeah, and then you would see some things where it's like megabits is, I believe, abbreviated as capital M, small b, and bytes is capital M, capital B. So you would sometimes see like certain ads that you'd be like, is that megabits or megabytes? Are they trying to put one over on me?
Yeah.
This was video gaming in the late 80s.
Yep.
And it's still, I mean, it still exists.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it still causes me problems as a translator. Like, I gotta pay attention to context to properly translate megabit and megabyte.
Just figure it out. Just
Eh.
guess. All right.
Anyone got any Smash characters they've warmed up to over the years, but on the Ayane sort of style?
Nah.
No.
Hey, you know what? I believe it or not, I actually had to warm up to Yoshi. Did not like him in Smash Bros. 64.
I can see that.
He does, yeah, he controls weirdly, right?
Yeah,
like the old egg thing.
They kind of normalized him over the games to make his recovery and stuff more like everybody else. But yeah, for the original, I loved Link and lesser extent Samus, and kind of used them a whole lot. Ness was crazy powerful if you knew how to use him correctly. But then from Melee onwards, Yoshi kind of took his natural place at the top of my list.
There we go. All right, we now have our joke email of the day. MASB writes, "Greetings, Greg, Gee, Steve, and Ray. Nintendo recently announced that Nintendo Labo will be made compatible with various games, starting with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe using the Toy-Con motorbike from the Variety Kit. Naturally, my mind started to wander, and the following was the result. We know that Nintendo would like to keep the 3DS around a little longer to make some sweet cash. We also know that they're all about synergy these days. Hence, the upcoming Luigi's Mansion port/remake for 3DS will be compatible with the Toy-Con house. The button block can control Luigi's flashlight. The crank block the vacuum. The key block can open doors and change the environment. And, finally, the cable block can be used to talk to Professor Egad and warp through the different places. Talk about a must-have. My other ideas include the resurrection of Wii Music done, quote, right, using the Toy-Con piano. Maybe we'll call it Mario Teaches Piano to lure in the enormous nostalgic DOS gaming crowd. Or have more Breath of the Wild DLC with the fishing minigame using the Toy-Con fishing rod. I bet that would still sell better than the Champion's Ballad. Oof. What Labo features would you, quote, like to see released in upcoming Switch games? The cellulose is the limit." So he betrays his intention with the quotes here. He wants horse shit. And so,
it's the only currency he accepts, I think.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like this is what he asks for, on a fairly regular basis. So are we going to limit ourselves? Let's just set some rules. Do we want to limit ourselves to Toy-Cons that we know exist at this moment in time, or do we want to be able to make up Toy-Cons?
It's definitely better if it's a reference in an existing one.
Okay, so let's for the sake of maximum amount of work through, let's try to keep it to the existing ones. And I'll go first. He mentions the Champion Ballad and using the fishing minigame, but he neglects to mention that the result of completing the Champion's Ballad is you get an actual motorcycle. Well, we happen to have a Labo motorcycle kit. And also, we happen to know that if you drive the motorcycle as hard as you can in Zelda, the game does not know how to handle it and cannot load in fast enough. But what if you were the motorcycle? What if you could see the world loading in front of you while you're driving with the handlebars directly in front of you? I think that's all we need to do. We need to get motion controls for the motorcycle so that I can make the Labo motorcycle kit and I can ride Link's whatever that thing was called. Everybody else got cool champion robots the size of like buildings. He got a motorcycle. It's not fair. Rivalis can fly. Like, fuck you. I got a motorcycle with no weapons. But now you can ride the motorcycle wherever you want to go in Hyrule, as long as you don't like drive it off into a river or something. It doesn't work well there.
So it's unfortunate that we have to stick with existing Labo.
No, you don't have to. No.
If you bonus points are awarded.
Before E3, I made some last-second predictions, and before we saw Smash, before we saw that they were
because you like that format so much.
Oh, absolutely.
The reference.
Before we saw that the Nintendo was releasing yet again GameCube controllers, I said that we would be able to construct our own cardboard wavebirds. And you just slip in the Joy-Con in there, and you've got a functioning GameCube controller. It's just cardboard. Now I have to look up like what the various Labo kits have, because I don't actually know.
So there's the robot, which we have to use.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, honestly, just we have to port Xenoblade Chronicles X to the Switch so that we can use the robot kit the way it was meant to be used. 45 hours into the game, you'll be able to step into a piece of cardboard and pilot your Skell.
Well, to be fair, you could take, because the robot kit is very involved in terms of putting that thing together. So, you could kind of be playing the game for the first 40 hours, and alongside that, like, be making it on the side as a hobby. And then, they'll line up pretty well.
It's true. You'll do the two things in sync with one another. Occasionally, you'll have to run a quest to go plant beacons, and sometimes you'll have to try to recrease some cardboard. And eventually, they'll be together. Now, the flying part with the Labo kit, not sure how we're going to deal with that. Like, that not supported functionality. So at the 90-hour mark, you'll have to get out of your cardboard. But in the interim, it's right there. For the new real-time combat they're going to add to the game. It's semi-real-time, but like it's less real-time when you're in the Skell. Now it's going to have actual punching. John, what do you got? I know there's something rolling around in your head right now.
You got the RC car. It would be cool if they could make a new RC Pro-Am. That'd be pretty sweet.
But do you actually, so you control the cars? Does your car just happen to mimic what's on screen as well?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
Your quote car.
Yeah, you'd be turning it. I guess it would have to be probably more responsive than it is. But you would kind of turn it, and then you would see that reflected on screen, ideally. But I don't think that would actually work in practice because it'd just be too damn slow.
Honestly, I was thinking you play the game on screen, but then your Toy-Con cars are acting it out on the floor in front of you.
Yeah, that would be cool if they could actually do that.
For added realism, there's just like these cardboard bugs bouncing around on your floor while you're playing on the screen.
To be fair, the thing that should be in the last Mario and Luigi game, Paper Jam, you had boss battles that were basically big paper crafts going up against each other. So if you could have a new kit where you could just have one of those RC car type things, but it's a papercraft Mario going up against a papercraft K-Mech or whatever, and then they act out the battle from the RPG. That's pretty much the closest you're going to be able to get to the idea of acting out as something from a Nintendo game, because they actually kind of went there with that.
So that might actually work. So we need some good, like, what do you quote like to see answers though? What if they made? So now we're gonna go into I've already given 2 answers with real ones. I'm free to make up new ones. What if they made cardboard bongos? I'm sure they would survive. I'm sure there wouldn't be any problem with them falling apart, and you could just sit there and drum Donkey Konga all day for an hour or two.
Isn't that just Let's Tap?
Yeah, seriously.
No, because Let's Tap is about tapping. This is about bongoing, which is not tapping. This is
I guess the only way that I ever used the bongos was with Jungle Beat, I never initially I might have used the bongos as they were meant to be played, but eventually I figured out like, oh, I can just press these down like buttons.
Yeah, you just depress them rather than smack them.
Exactly. So that much to the disappointment of my roommates at the time, who really wanted me to just make a fool of myself.
I just don't, especially like trying to play that at a higher level. We go for the sort of like grades that you go through to get the better scores. Like I just can't imagine being precise with big, exaggerated kind of smacking at the bongos.
Right.
But it worked pretty damn well with the, when you actually kind of reined in the movements like that. Even the whole clapping thing, you just sort of tap the sides of rather than the actual drums themselves, just the sort of casing around. So you just did a little tap on there, and that picked up on that microphone, way more precisely than I would have necessarily expected.
Here, just a few tips for you listeners for the bongos and Jungle Beat. There you go.
Yeah, the way it was meant to be played. This Wii remote.
The way it was meant to be played on cardboard. Obviously, the future. Yeah. The future of gaming available to you. What if there was Mario Artists, but all it was they just gave you the cardboard and said, go paint it yourself? There's nothing on the TV at all. Just fucking paint it. This is real Mario Artists. Just do it. And it's just pieces of cardboard and paint. And then they have the audacity to sell it to you for $50. Now I'm putting my business cap on. This isn't about making a good game. It's about making good cash.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting about sort of how successful or not Labo's going to be. Some people have been blaming it for the stock price dip that happened a little bit ago. And questioning how successful it's going to be, and then I guess you could look at the way they're adding the support for Mario Kart 8 as kind of a response, perhaps, to the fact that maybe it's not been as quick of a success as perhaps they'd like. But at the same time, you can kind of see it being more of a slow burn kind of thing. I mean, really. With the cost of it and the nature of it, it strikes me as being so much more of a Christmas kind of thing, of a product. When you're going to have time for parents to spend time with the kids assembling it and all that kind of thing. Like it just, I don't know whether April was the best time necessarily to launch it, but if they can find ways to keep it relevant and maybe get it to the end of the year and give it a new sort of reinvigorated push, then maybe it will achieve the kind of success that they're looking for it to have then.
That came up during the QA today, actually. And basically the answer to the, hey, it didn't seem to sell well, what's wrong? Was, well, this isn't going to be like a video game where it sells high in its opening. This is for kids. Kids don't get to buy their own games. So it's birthdays and Christmas. Birthdays and holidays. So like I guess their thought process is we want to sell it to you on your birthday as well as on the holidays. It doesn't really matter when you release them, because there's a fairly I mean there is a curve where more people are born during certain parts of the year than others, but I mean birthdays happen year round. But maybe the goal was if it does really well out of the gate, we can make sure we have like toy kits 3 and 4 out as well in time for the holidays.
No, so the best thing about the holiday part of it is just the idea of parents having time off to spend with the kids, actually kind of putting them together and getting into that part of it, that it's a kind of a shared activity rather than just something that you stick in a kid's hands and say, that's it, you go and do whatever you do with it.
Yeah. What if there was a Toy-Con kit for storing your Toy-Con kits? You made one that ends up containing all of the, gives you space to hold up. Look, I'm trying to make money here, John. You laugh.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm selling you a product.
It's like a storage
that exists entirely to solve a problem that I created for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a work. This is no longer a shoot, John. This is a work. I'm out to make the money, and I don't care if I'm the heel here. We're gonna do this. So you plug your Joy-Cons into the Toy-Con holding kit, and then you go on your Switch and you press a button, and it causes a latch to release that allows it to open. And then you can take your other Toy-Con out, change the Toy-Con app you're running to the one for those, plug the Joy-Cons into those Toy-Cons, and then use them. Then do the same to put them back. You go launch the old app, put your Joy-Cons back in, press it, and then it closes. I'm solving the world's
now
problems.
I'm just thinking about cardboard Rube Goldberg machines as a sort of mouse trap, but in cardboard and somehow related to the Switch.
Yeah, well, it's related to the Switch in terms of money.
Also, I mean, the obvious thing is just a cardboard, play area for a Mario Party game. Just have a physical board kit to make that interacts with the Switch. I mean, they have all this stuff about really putting your two Switches together and having them go from one screen to the other. I mean, let's actually make it a board game again.
We're gonna take another shot at the Animal Crossing board game, but you're gonna have to buy a really expensive Toy-Con kit to use it. And Amiibo, fuck you.
It could actually sort of double up then, because like your sort of pieces to move around the board could be the papercraft things that you use for the boss fights in Mario RPG as well.
There you go. It's we're gonna call it Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival plus Toy-Con, fuck you. That's the full title of the game. It's $145 to play it effectively. All right, anybody else got any real bullshit answers? I think we're at that point now where it's like, let's really get in there. And so, Robot Kit Punch Out. Like it's the old
You're close,
Sega.
James. You're close, but considering I know your business acumen is second to none, I was surprised here that you didn't say Robot Kit Teleroboxer because of the mind share that Virtual Boy game has.
This is our Donkey Kong Punch-Out game that we've been workshopping.
Pushing, yes.
So now you've got two brands involved pushing this thing. And then you can do your Teleroboxer DLC.
Yeah,
but you're working...
And for the DLC, you actually kind of snap on this kind of cellophane mask, red cellophane mask in front of you so that you can see everything in red.
So the robot
Basically,
kit already has a mask, Guillaume. You just it's just red cellophane you wrap around the mask.
It's a sweet wrapper, basically.
Yes. It's like slightly tacky on one side, so it sticks. That's it. You're done. So it's that. Yeah, it's obviously it's Toy-Con controls only. If you want to play the new Punch-Out, the new Donkey Kong Punch-Out. The DLC
Donkey Kong versus mechs.
Donkey Kong versus... What if Donkey Kong in a mech? What if it's a Donkey Kong shaped mech?
Well, it could be that, yeah. It's kind of like... It'd be kind of like Goemon, and, you know, like he gets in a giant mech that looks pretty much like him.
What if it's not a giant mech? What if it's just slightly bigger? Like, very slightly bigger. Like, almost comedically close to his size.
There's not enough of that, is there? It's not enough. It's just like, giant mechs just stretch plausibility too much. What if it was just a bit smaller?
What if it's really just like a body shell? Like, he has to kind of like squeeze into it, and it's just like, okay, I'm in. It's like marginally, they do the wide shot to show you the mech, and you think, oh, DK's getting a mech. He's going to be huge. And then they actually give you context for it, and he's standing next to it, and it's like 2 inches taller. It's like power armor instead. Then you put it in the Metroid universe. See, now we're making brand synergy. Brand synergy is happening. DK and his Chozo armor boxing racist stereotypes in New York in your cardboard robot kit. Done. I have made $1 million seller. No, I've made $1 billion seller. That's it. That's business. All right, boys, top that.
I fold.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the show this week. You can send your emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Greg, what is our end music for this week?
I get to defer this time.
Oh, Guillaume, what is our end music this week?
That's right, yeah. So I've got Pac-Man Fever, clearly.
Yeah, it's a documented condition for
There's
a
no
reason.
cure.
Mm-hmm. And so I was listening to the soundtrack to Pac-Man Championship 2, edition 2, this morning, and it's very kind of dancey trance, like techno music, but it's pretty good. So I just went with a track, Pack Jump Up, which is the first kind of score attack stage. But yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
Cool. Well, that's gonna do it for us. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.